Hello, dear viewer, and this is how to play Forbidden Island. Forbidden Island is a 2 to 4 players cooperative game, ages 10 and up. Its contents include 58 cards divided as follows: 28 treasure cards, 24 flood cards, and 6 adventure cards. 24 double-sided island tiles, 6 wooden pawns, and 4 treasure figures, as well as 1 water meter and 1 water level marker. Your team's objective is to keep the Forbidden Island from sinking in order to buy enough time to capture its 4 treasure. And once you capture all 4 of them, you all must make it to the Fool's Landing and escape by helicopter in order to win. To create your island, first shuffle the 24 island tiles and randomly place them face up, non-blue and white side face up, into a grid as follows. Make a 4x4 square of tiles in the center of the play area. Then place 2 tiles next to each of the 2 middle tiles on every side of the square. Important note, leave a small gap between the tiles. This forms the Forbidden Island and your pawns will move around like a board game. Afterwards, place the 4 treasure figures at each corner of the square, as it's shown here. Place the 4 treasure figures around the island: the Earthstone, the Statue of the Wind, the Crystal of Fire, and the Ocean's Chalice. Your team will try to capture these treasures during the course of the game. Take a moment to locate the 8 tiles on which you can claim treasure. Each treasure can be claimed on one of these 2 tiles as indicated by the symbol in the bottom left corner. Divide the cards. Separate the cards into 3 decks according to the back: Flood deck, the blue back; Treasure deck, the red back; and the adventure cards. The island starts to sink. Shuffle the flood deck cards and place it face down on the side of the island to form the flood deck pile. Draw the top 6 cards one at a time and place them face up next to the draw pile to form the flood discard pile. For each card drawn, flip the corresponding island tile over to its flooded side, blue and white sided. And now it's time to assign all your adventurers their roles. Shuffle the 6 adventurer cards and randomly give to 1 to each player. And then take a pawn matching the color of your adventurer card and place it on the corresponding isle tiles. Look for the matching pawn icon in the lower right corner of the tile. But however, the pilot starts on the Fool's Landing tile always, due to his icon on the bottom right corner of that tile. And also, it's okay to start on a flooded tile as well. And now you must hand out the treasure deck cards to all the players. Shuffle the treasure deck card and deal 2 cards to each player. Place your cards right in front of you, face up at all times, so you and your teammates can see everybody's cards at all times. If anyone gets a water rice card, give them a replacement card and shuffle the water rice card back into the treasure deck. Place the treasure deck face down by one side of the island. Note, there will be a treasure discard pile right next to the treasure deck, just like the flood deck. And now set your difficulty. Attach the water level marker on the left side of the water meter and to set your desired difficulty. And remember, you may look through both treasure and flood discard piles at any time during the game. And now the game has finally been set up. Everyone is ready to play. So now it's time to discuss the order of play. On each player's turn, there are 3 parts. First part, take up to 3 actions. Second part, draw 2 treasure deck cards. And the third and last one, draw flood cards equal to the water level. Adventurers may take up to 3 actions per turn. And there are 4 actions that your adventurers can do. They can either do move, shore up, give a treasure card, or capture a treasure. To move your pawn, you're going to do it one move at a time to any adjacent island tile. It could be either up, down, left, or right, but never diagonally. You may move onto a flooded tile, but may not move onto or over the space of a missing tile. However, there are some exceptions to this depending on the adventurer's role card you have. The other action you can do is known as shore up. You may, for one action, shore up any an adjacent island tile to its flooded side and flip it over to its non-flooded side. Give a treasure card. You may, for one action, give any treasure card to any player, but you must be on the same island tile as the player you are giving to. You may not give special action cards away. And the last action is known as capturing treasure. You may, for one action, capture a treasure by discarding 4 matching treasure cards from your hand if your pawn is either on a corresponding tile aisle. And the tile aisle must be either one of the 8 island tiles that has in the bottom left corner the treasure of you're trying to capture.
Discard the 4 cards and then put them in the discard treasure deck.
You can also capture a treasure on a flooded island tile as well.
After you do your actions, you then must draw 2 treasure cards from the treasure card deck. The most common kind of card in the treasure deck card are treasure cards. There are 5 of the each treasure card in the treasure deck. In the treasure deck pile, there are other type of cards you can receive. They're called
special action cards. There are 2 types of them.
The helicopter lift card. The helicopter lift card can move 1 or more pawns on the same tile the player's pawn who played it onto any other tile.
It does not count as an action, and you may use it at any time. It also has second use. You can use it to win the game by having all pawns on the Fool's Landing tile and use it to get off the island and win. And there's also a second type of action card, the last type, sandbag cards. Just like the helicopter cards, it does not count as an action, you can use it at any time, but its purpose is that you could shore up any tile on the board. And it doesn't have to be a flood tile that's an adjacent to you. However, you cannot use it to save an island tile that has sunken into the abyss, because once a tile has sunken into the abyss, you cannot get it back. It's gone for the rest of the game. But be aware, there's also the water rights cards. There are 3 of them in this deck. Every time you draw a water rights card, you do these things in order. Move the level water marker up by 1 level. And then the second part is you take all the cards from the flood discard pile and you shuffle them, and you put them back on top of the deck.
And then you draw the flood cards depending on the level marker that your water mark is on.
And then you discard the water rights card to the treasure discard pile. If you draw a water rights card, you don't get a replacement treasure card. If you draw 2 water rights cards in a row, shuffle the flood discard pile only once, but you move the water level marker up to 2 tick marks. And if you draw a water rights card, but there are no more cards left in the flood deck pile, just move the level marker up by 1 mark tick. But when the treasure deck runs out of cards, you take all your discarded treasure deck cards, you shuffle them, and you make yourself a new deck. But be careful, you have a hand limit. You can only have 5 cards is your total. If you ever find yourself having more than 5 cards, you must discard your cards until you have 5 cards. But however, this is a good opportunity to use up any special action cards, because since you're about to discard them anyway, it's a good idea to use them right now. Now for the third part. Draw the flood cards. In order to do this, you must take the top of flood cards and a coin that's equal to the number of that's on the watermark level. And then you put them into the discard pile, and those cards that you just picked from the top of the deck, you must go to your island tiles and you must flip them to their flooded side. But, however, if you pick up a flood card, but that island's tile has already been flooded, you remove that tile, will be sink into the abyss. You must remove it from the game, as well as its flood card. If a pawn is on a flood tile that becomes flooded, lift the pawn off the tile and flip it, and then return the pawn to that tile. However, if a pawn is on a tile that sinks into the abyss, that pawn must immediately swim in an adjacent tile.
If the flood drop pile runs out, immediately shuffle the flood discard pile and stack the cards face down to form a new flood draw pile. If this happens in the middle of a turn, continue drawing flood cards as necessary from the new pile.
But in order to help you win the game, each of your adventurers has special abilities, which we're about to go over right now. And here they are. The Pilot. The Pilot is represented by the blue pawn, and once per turn may fly into any tile on the island for one action. If the pilot, however, is on a tile that sinks into the abyss, he may save himself by flying into any tile. The Explorer, represented by the green. The Explorer may move or shore up tiles diagonally. And if the Explorer is ever sinking into the abyss, he may save himself by swimming to any tile that's diagonally adjacent to him. Engineer, represented by the red pawn. The Engineer may shore up 2 adjacent tiles for one action. Messenger, represented by the gray pawn. The Messenger may give treasure cards to any player anywhere on the island for one action per card. The Navigator, represented by the yellow pawn. The Navigator may move another player up to 2 adjacent tiles for one action. Diver, represented by the black pawn. Diver may move through one or more adjacent flooded tiles, or can move through missing tiles for one action. But however, the diver must end his turn on a tile. But if the diver has found himself sinking into the abyss, he may swim to the nearest tile. However, there's 4 ways to lose in this game. You and your adventurers must be very careful and watch out for these challenges that lies up ahead of you guys. If both temples, caves, palaces, or gardens tiles sink before you can collect their respective treasures, then the game is lost. Another way to lose, if the Fool's Landing tile sinks into the abyss, then you lose. Another way, if any player is on an island tile that sinks into the abyss and there are no adjacent tiles to swim to, then you lose. Or if the water marker level reaches the skull and crossbones, then the game is lost. You lose.
And that is how you play Forbidden Island. It's a fun cooperative game for the whole family to enjoy. It offers fun challenges and a good time for everybody to enjoy. I highly recommend it.